and you felt like you could not continue. When you're feeling like that, it's hard to truly trust in you. So it is important to believe in something or someone greater than yourself. Because in those moments when you're feeling that way, you can still call on something higher than you. What that allows you to do is it allows you to put what you feel as or deem as a weakness, or you feel or deem as your inability to do something. Once you put that source in that, then you can begin to get your reps in. You can begin to figure out what to do next, because now you have the burden of this situation that you're in off of you. So just want to say that is one of the things that has been really, really, really effective in my life, is believing in a source higher than myself. I can recall telling a friend a story about something traumatic that had happened in my adult years. And I was sharing the story, and he said to me, Rita, and that's what he called me. He said, I would never have known you were going through this because you showed up with this smile. He said, you need some therapy and you need to get back into your church, right? And it dawned on me that this person is not a person who, believes in church or anything like that. But he recognized in me what it was that I needed in that moment, because I was just showing up. And the more he talked, the more we engaged, the more I shared. That's when he realized that you're dealing with something huge, that you just put this face on. The danger with just putting a face on is that every single day, that thing will become greater and bigger and bigger and stronger. And it will overtake every aspect of your life. The things that you say you want to do, you won't be able to fully focus on. The relationships that you have, it will show up before you could even get there. So it is so important to make sure that you trust in a source higher than yourself. And in that trusting, you will get the tools. You'll be able to take those breaths and take a moment and take a beat away from the trauma that you've experienced, to see what it is that you need to do next. And you'll be able to verbalize, speaking to people that care about you, and then them recognizing, hey, something's a little off. Otherwise, you'll just put on that face every single day, and you'll live in a shelled version of yourself. So you will never be your most authentic self if trauma is behind the face that you put on every day. Now, as I stated before, trauma is a negative experience that has left a long lasting effects. And what you told yourself in those moments of the trauma is what really resonates with you today. If you felt embarrassed, if you felt disrespected, if you felt unworthy, if you felt, ugly, if you felt unloved, if you felt abandoned, every time you speak to someone, those feelings show up before you do. Just as if you're insecure, someone can tell by when they're looking at you if you're suffering with insecurity. Take that in for a second. So if you're dealing with trauma and you're dealing with unresolved, unhealed, untapped into trauma, that trauma will show up. Just like you can tell if somebody's insecure, someone can tell that, oh, that person's been through something. Not that being through something is a problem. But not dealing with what you've been through is the cause of you not being where you want. The purpose of this platform is to make sure that whatever the trauma is, whatever it is, you might say, Sarita, you can't tell me that what I went through is something I should just get over. And no, I'm not just saying get over it. It's going to be with you, right? But what I am saying is there is a time to have that trauma and take whatever you can from it and revamp it to use it as an energy source for your next. That trauma, it happened. We can't make it unhappen. That trauma, it did what it did. And if it was a person, if it was an experience, if it was something specific, those feelings that you had in that moment are valid. They are valid. What I want you to know is that although those feelings in that moment were valid, you do not have to keep reliving that story, reliving those emotions, reliving the time, reliving any of it. It is now time to be able to express and tell that story, but express it from a position of power, a position of confidence, a position of empathy. Because what trauma does do, that is possibly the only good thing that it can do, is it could give you empathy for others who have had and experienced trauma. But you can only unlock the empathy when you have healed. You can only unlock that when you have done the work for yourself. You can only unlock that when you have put yourself so first that when you show up and you can engage with somebody else that has experienced trauma, that you can show up full, complete, whole, understanding that things happen, understanding that it is not the person. Your trauma is not you. Your trauma is not your identity. The trauma that you've experienced is not who you are. It is a moment in time that, because it happened and because of the feelings and emotions that were tied to it, it affects you every single day. So now, what I encourage you to do is rewrite the story. What do you mean, Sarita? Rewrite the story. What I mean is, it is time for you to say, yes, this thing happened. And in that moment, I felt disrespected. In that moment, I felt unloved. In that moment, I felt hated. In that moment, I felt ugly. In that moment, I felt abandoned. In that moment, I felt all of those things. However, that is not where I am today. If you woke up this morning and that thing is not happening in this very moment, you can literally say to yourself, that is then and this is now. If you felt hatred, you can now replace that with love. If you felt abandoned, you can now replace that with the community that you have and the people that you have around you that are loving on you, that are caring for you. If you feel ugly, if you felt in that moment ugly, it is time to look in that mirror and tell yourself every single day that you are beautiful. Because you are. And you've been created for a purpose greater than that one particular time and that one particular experience that you keep reliving over and over. If you cannot tell the story of your trauma without breaking down, without feeling bad, without going back into those very emotions at the time, it is time to get some healing. If you feel like that everyone you talk to, that you need to trauma dump, and what that means is you want to put and tell your story because it's on you so bad to any and everyone who would listen, it is time to get some help. If in those moments when you're in relationship with either your family, your friends, or your romantic partner, and you feel the need to run away from situations that should have required your input and did require your presence, but now you're running, understand that that is a normal, typical thing when there is a perceived danger. But if there's an issue and you are running away from anything that you feel like you can't handle, that is a part of the flight mode. We talked briefly about the fight when you're just angry all the time, but I want to also talk about the freeze, the flight. When you have a situation, and no, you don't get angry, no, you don't get any of those. You might feel anxious, you might feel inadequate, you might feel like you can't deal with this, and all you want to do is run away. Or even if you just don't want to show up at family functions because you don't want to be triggered. Now, trigger is another term that has been used and used and used. But trigger is important. Your triggers are important to be aware of because what that does is that one thing or one word or one action or how somebody looked at you can trigger you back into the time that the trauma happened, the way something smelled, any of your senses that have been heightened at the moment of your trauma can be heightened today just by someone unknowingly saying something, wearing something, and it's maybe a cologne or you see something, their facial expressions, it can literally trigger you back like a bow and arrow back to that time and that trauma. And then your body senses if you're in that flight, you're ready to run. You're thinking, this is a perceived danger. This is something that I can't deal with. And understand, if this was a normal danger, and that it didn't require your presence, that is your body's normal reaction. And that is okay. But when it is a constant thing and you have isolated yourself so much because of the potential perceived trauma of just being in relationship with people, just being around people, it is time to deal with that unresolved trauma. And the last one is freeze. So we talked about fight and how angry you can get and how any word or deed or someone can say, you're ready to argue. You're ready to fight. You're ready to go toe to toe, blow to blow. We also talked about freeze. When in any given situation, you're ready to take flight. Talked about flight. In any given situation, you're ready to run. Or you isolate yourself from everyone else because of the anxiety you feel about somebody potentially triggering you or saying something that you don't want. Those are things that in normal cases of danger, your body is ready. The last one is freeze. And this is an interesting one because if there is a perceived danger and you perceived it, but you say nothing, you do nothing, you clam up, and no one really knows what's going on because maybe the person that you're speaking to did not mean to trigger you, did not mean to offend you, did not mean to take you back, and now you've completely shut down. That is the freeze mode. And what freeze does is it makes you believe that there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can say. There's nothing you that will allow you to do this. And in some cases, some people have what they call or deem panic attacks in those moments where they can't breathe, where they can't fully function, where their mind is all over the place. And that is not a good feeling. And those three things are fight, flight, and freeze. And in normal circumstances of perceived danger, those three things are something that your body does, and your body also releases a hormone called cortisone that gets you ready for whatever it is that is coming up against you. But if you're in those states all of the time, you will put your body physically in distress. Imagine always being on the ready. The tension in your shoulders, the tension in your back, the tension in your forehead, your temples. Think about how your body reacts to perceived danger, and think about every single conversation that you have and the potential of that conversation putting you, or a thought of you being in danger. So every conversation is putting you in fight, flight, or freeze. It is time to get the help you need. And we're going to start with trusting in the source higher than ourselves. That's where we're going to start. I don't know what it is for you. I can't tell you what to trust in. But what I will say, it is time to get the burden off of you and put it on a source higher than you. Because what that does is it gives you rest. It gives you the ability to think through the process. And it also gives you a hope for a brighter future. Now, this has been the first unofficial episode of Turn Your Trauma into Treasure, or Trauma to Treasure. And this episode is dealing with all the different relationships and how the perceived danger in those relationships and the trauma that you have that is unresolved may have you showing up in the fight, the flight, and the freeze. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and when the official launch happens, I hope that you'll come and join me for that. And then I cannot wait to see how this journey will take you from trauma to treasure. Have a great day, great life, on purpose. Love you.